Abstract, as artificial intelligence reshapes work environments. Organizations face a critical inflection point in leadership philosophy and practice. This article examines how human-centered leadership, characterized by authentic caring, empathy, and genuine commitment to individual development, serves as a foundational response to AI-driven workplace transformation. Drawing on organizational behavior research, leadership studies, and contemporary practice examples, we explore how leaders can create environments where employees feel valued, respected, and empowered to contribute meaningfully alongside intelligent systems. The analysis synthesizes evidence on the organizational and individual outcomes of dignity-centered leadership, presents practical interventions grounded in relational authenticity and developmental support, and proposes forward-looking capabilities for sustaining human flourishing in technology-augmented contexts. Findings suggest that leaders who prioritize psychological safety, individualized growth, and purpose-driven contribution position their organizations for sustainable success while simultaneously protecting employee well-being during periods of technological disruption. The integration of artificial intelligence into workplace operations has accelerated dramatically, fundamentally altering how work gets accomplished, how decisions are made, and, most critically, how employees experience their organizational roles. While much attention focuses on technical capabilities, productivity gains, and competitive advantage, a parallel and equally consequential transformation is unfolding in the leadership domain. As algorithms assume routine cognitive tasks and augment decision-making processes, the distinctly human dimensions of leadership, empathy, authentic caring, developmental commitment, and the capacity to help individuals feel genuinely valued, have shifted from nice-to-have soft skills to strategic imperatives. The stakes are considerable. Organizations implementing AI without corresponding investment in human-centered leadership frequently report challenges with employee retention, innovation capacity, and organizational culture. Conversely, leaders who approach technological change through a lens of authentic caring and individual dignity appear to create contexts where employees embrace rather than resist augmentation, contribute creative insights that algorithms cannot generate, and sustain engagement even as work itself transforms. This moment demands a fundamental recalibration of leadership identity and practice. The transactional, efficiency-focused management paradigm that dominated industrial and early knowledge economies proves insufficient when humans and intelligent systems work in concert. What emerges as essential is a leadership orientation grounded in treating every individual with genuine dignity and respect, authentically supporting their development, and creating daily experiences where people feel needed, wanted, and able to contribute in ways that matter. This article explores what such leadership looks like in practice, why it produces superior outcomes, and how organizations can build sustainable capabilities for human-centered leadership in AI-augmented contexts. The AI-augmented workplace landscape defining human-centered leadership in technology contexts. Human-centered leadership in AI-augmented environments represents a conscious, values-driven approach that places individual dignity, authentic relationships, and personal development at the core of leadership practice. Even as, and especially because, technological systems increasingly mediate work. This leadership philosophy rests on several interconnected principles. First, it recognizes that authentic caring is not peripheral sentiment but a leadership competency with documented performance implications. Leaders who demonstrate genuine concern for employee well-being and development create psychological safety that enables risk-taking, learning, and adaptation, precisely what organizations need during technological transitions. Edmondson, 2018. Second, human-centered leadership commits to individualized development, acknowledging that each person possesses unique strengths, aspirations, and potential contributions that warrant personalized attention and support. Third, this approach prioritizes creating daily experiences where employees feel their presence matters. Their perspectives are valued, and their contributions carry meaning beyond mere task completion. Critically, human-centered leadership in AI contexts does not position technology and humanity in opposition. Rather, it views leadership as the integrative function that helps individuals understand their evolving roles, develop capabilities that complement rather than compete with algorithms, and maintain sense of purpose and agency as work transforms. State of practice: leadership in technology-driven transformation. The distribution of human-centered leadership practices remains uneven across industries and organizational contexts. Technology-native companies often demonstrate stronger cultures of transparency and developmental support, while traditional industries implementing digital transformation frequently struggle to balance efficiency objectives with genuine caring for displaced or disrupted workers. Manufacturing, financial services, and customer service sectors, where AI adoption has accelerated, report particular challenges in maintaining employee trust and engagement during implementation phases. Several drivers explain the growing urgency around human-centered leadership. First, the pace of technological change has compressed adaptation timelines, leaving less margin for neglecting the human dimensions of transformation. Second, evolving employee expectations around workplace experience have increased the competitive significance of leadership approaches that demonstrate authentic caring. Third, emerging evidence suggests connections between human-centered leadership and innovation outcomes, elevating these practices from ethical considerations to strategic opportunities. Cameron and Spritzer, 2012. The path forward requires deliberate attention to how leaders communicate about change, support individual development, create psychologically safe environments, design meaningful work, and recognize human contributions, themes we explore in detail throughout this article. Organizational and individual consequences of human-centered leadership. Organizational performance impacts. The case for human-centered leadership in AI-augmented contexts manifests across multiple performance dimensions, with effects documented in both research literature and organizational experience. Employee retention and engagement represent immediate and measurable impact areas. Organizations demonstrating strong human-centered leadership dimensions, particularly authentic caring and developmental support, tend to experience better retention outcomes during technology implementation periods. The retention differential proves especially pronounced for high performers and specialized talent that organizations can least afford to lose during transformation initiatives, while causality proves difficult to establish definitively. The pattern suggests that feeling genuinely valued and supported influences employees' decisions to remain with organizations navigating technological change. Innovation outcomes provide another compelling performance indicator. Psychological safety, the condition where team members feel safe taking interpersonal risks, enables the learning behaviors. Creative experimentation and candid dialogue essential for innovation. Edmondson, 2018. In AI-augmented contexts specifically, human-centered leadership appears to correlate with higher rates of human-AI collaboration innovation, where employees identify creative applications for intelligent systems rather than simply executing predetermined implementations. When people feel their ideas will be welcomed rather than dismissed, they contribute insights about how technology might be applied in novel ways. Customer satisfaction and service quality represent downstream consequences of human-centered leadership that carry significant implications. In service industries implementing AI-driven customer interaction systems, organizations whose leaders prioritize employee development and authentic caring appear to maintain stronger customer satisfaction outcomes compared to those focusing exclusively on technological efficiency. The connection likely operates through multiple mechanisms. Engaged employees deliver better service, well-supported workers handle complex customer needs more effectively, and psychologically safe teams identify and resolve service issues more quickly. Organizational adaptability during ongoing change emerges as another performance benefit. Companies navigating continuous technological evolution require workforces willing to learn new systems, adapt work approaches, and tolerate implementation imperfections. Human-centered leaders who demonstrate genuine care for employees' experiences during disruption appear more successful at sustaining this adaptive capacity over extended periods. Avoiding the change fatigue that degrades performance in organizations treating technological implementation as purely technical exercise. Individual well-being and employee experience impacts beyond organizational metrics. Human-centered leadership generates substantial consequences for individual employees navigating AI-augmented work environments, with implications for psychological health, professional development, and experienced meaning. Job-related anxiety and stress associated with technological change respond meaningfully to leadership approaches. Employees working under leaders who demonstrate authentic caring and provide clear developmental support tend to report lower anxiety levels regarding technological implementation compared to those whose leaders focus exclusively on technical execution. The anxiety reduction appears to stem less from concrete job security assurances, which leaders often cannot provide, than from the experience of feeling genuinely valued and supported regardless of technological shifts. When leaders convey through consistent actions that they care about employees as whole people rather than merely as productive resources, workers appear better equipped to navigate uncertainty. Professional identity and self-efficacy during role transitions represent another critical well-being dimension. As AI systems assume tasks that previously defined employees' expertise and organizational value, individuals face challenging questions about their continuing relevance and capability. Leaders who invest in individualized development conversations help employees identify uniquely human contributions and create opportunities for new skill building, enable workers to reconstruct professional identities around augmented rather than displaced competencies. This identity work proves essential for maintaining self-efficacy and motivation during transformation. Without supportive leadership, employees whose roles change significantly may experience threats to their sense of professional competence and worth. Experienced meaningfulness, the sense that one's work contributes value and purpose, becomes particularly vulnerable in AI-augmented contexts where algorithms handle increasingly sophisticated functions. Human-centered leaders protect meaningfulness through explicit attention to how employees' human judgment, creativity, relationship skills, and contextual wisdom complement technological capabilities. When leaders authentically communicate that these human dimensions matter and create structures that make such contributions visible, employees appear more likely to sustain meaningfulness even as their specific tasks evolve. Psychological safety and voice represent foundational well-being elements that human-centered leadership directly influences. Employees who experience their leaders as genuinely caring and respectful feel substantially greater permission to raise concerns, admit mistakes, ask questions, and propose ideas, all essential behaviors for successful human-AI collaboration. Edmondson, 2018. The voice mechanisms that psychological safety enables prove particularly valuable during implementation phases when frontline workers possess critical insights about system limitations and improvement opportunities. When employees believe their input genuinely matters to leaders who care about their perspectives, they contribute knowledge that improves both technological effectiveness and work experience. Evidence-based organizational responses, transparent and empathetic communication strategies, authentic. Empathy-informed communication serves as foundational to human-centered leadership during technological transformation. Leaders who communicate transparently about AI implementation plans, acknowledge legitimate uncertainties, and explicitly address employee concerns tend to create higher trust and engagement compared to those who minimize disruption or overpromise certainty. Edmondson, 2018. Effective transparent communication in AI contexts involves several interconnected practices, building trust through honest dialogue. Provide early, ongoing updates about technological initiatives, explaining both capabilities and limitations of systems being implemented. Acknowledge what remains uncertain rather than creating false impressions of complete certainty. Share decision-making rationales so employees understand why particular technological approaches are being pursued. Admit when leaders themselves are learning and adapting. Modeling the continuous learning required of everyone. Create predictable communication rhythms so employees know when and how they'll receive updates. Addressing emotional dimensions. Authentically recognize explicitly that job changes create legitimate anxiety and concern. Validate employee feelings rather than dismissing emotional responses as irrational. Distinguish between empathy, understanding and acknowledging feelings, and false reassurance, making promises that cannot be kept. Convey authentic confidence in employees' capacity to adapt and contribute in evolving contexts. Frame technological change as partnership between humans and technology rather than positioning AI as replacement or pure efficiency mechanism. Creating genuine two-way dialogue. Establish structured opportunities for employees to voice concerns, ask questions, and provide input about implementation approaches. Ensure listening mechanisms are genuine rather than performative. Employees quickly distinguish between leaders who authentically care about their perspectives and those executing pro forma consultation. Respond substantively to themes and concerns raised, explaining how feedback shapes decisions even when specific suggestions cannot be implemented. Make visible the connection between employee input and actual implementation changes. Invite ongoing dialogue rather than treating communication as one-time announcements. Microsoft's approach to implementing AI-powered productivity tools illustrates transparent communication practices at scale. Rather than announcing completed decisions, leaders engaged employees in multi-stage dialogues about how AI could enhance rather than replace human work. The company created dedicated channels for employees to share concerns and ideas, with leadership teams publicly responding to themes and explaining how feedback shaped implementation approaches. Critically, Microsoft leaders acknowledged they could not guarantee every role would remain unchanged, but committed to supporting affected employees through reskilling and internal mobility opportunities. This transparency, combined with demonstrated caring through investment in development programs, contributed to positive adoption outcomes and sustained employee engagement during significant workplace transformation. Individualized development and growth pathways. Human-centered leadership recognizes that AI-driven workplace changes affect individuals differently based on their current roles, skill profiles, career aspirations, and personal circumstances. Generic reskilling programs, while valuable, prove insufficient without personalized developmental support that helps each person navigate their unique transition. Effective individualized development begins with leaders investing time to understand each team member's strengths, development interests, and concerns about technological changes. This understanding enables creation of personalized learning pathways that build on existing capabilities while developing new skills that position individuals for valuable contributions in AI-augmented contexts. Adult learning research demonstrates that development initiatives aligned with individual interests and perceived relevance generate substantially higher engagement and skill transfer compared to mandated generic training. Knowles et al. 2015. Core practices for individualized development. Conduct regular one-on-one conversations exploring each employee's career aspirations, development goals, and concerns about role evolution. Assess current capabilities and identify specific skills that will remain valuable, skills that need augmentation, and new capabilities worth developing. Co-create personalized learning plans that align with both organizational needs and individual interests. Connect employees with learning resources, experiences, and relationships that support their specific development pathways. Monitor progress and adjust plans based on changing circumstances and emerging opportunities. Celebrate development milestones to reinforce that growth matters as much as current performance. Career development conversations. Leaders who engage employees in regular discussions about how their careers might evolve as AI transforms work, and who actively help individuals identify and pursue new opportunities, create powerful, experiences of being genuinely valued. These conversations prove most effective when leaders demonstrate authentic caring by asking open questions, listening without judgment, and committing organizational resources to support identified development goals. The conversation quality matters more than frequency. A single thoughtful dialogue where an employee feels truly heard and supported can generate more impact than multiple superficial check-ins. Mentorship and skill-building relationships. Organizations that establish formal mentoring programs connecting employees navigating AI-driven role changes with leaders who have successfully managed similar transitions tend to report higher confidence and faster adaptation. The mentoring relationship works partly through skill and knowledge transfer, but equally through the relational experience of having someone invested in one's success. When experienced professionals share both technical guidance and emotional support, they help mentees develop both competence and confidence for transformed roles. AT&T's widely studied workforce transformation initiative, which reskilled over 100,000 employees for technology-oriented roles, demonstrates individualized development at enterprise scale. Rather than assuming employees would autonomously navigate reskilling, the company invested in career support mechanisms that worked with employees to assess current skills, identify target roles, and create personalized learning plans. Leaders were held accountable not just for business outcomes but for the developmental progress of their team members. Critically, the approach recognized that different employees needed different pathways, some focusing on deepening technical expertise, others developing relationship and coordination capabilities that complement automated systems. The individualized approach generated both higher reskilling completion and stronger internal mobility outcomes compared to generic training programs. Building psychological safety and trust. Psychological safety, the shared belief that interpersonal risks like asking questions, admitting mistakes, or proposing new ideas will not result in punishment or embarrassment, emerges as perhaps the most critical enabler of successful human-AI collaboration. When employees feel psychologically safe, they provide candid feedback about system limitations, experiment with novel applications, and engage in the learning behaviors that technological change requires. Edmondson, 2018. Leaders build psychological safety through consistent behavioral patterns that demonstrate authentic caring and respect. The behaviors matter more than declarations. Employees assess psychological safety based on how leaders actually respond to vulnerability, not on stated values about open communication. Foundational psychological safety practices respond non-defensively to bad news, critical feedback, or reports of problems. Thank messengers rather than punishing them. Explicitly invite input and questions, particularly from quieter team members or those with less organizational power. Acknowledge one's own uncertainties and mistakes, modeling that perfection is not the standard and learning is valued. Visibly support employees who take reasonable risks even when outcomes disappoint, focusing on learning rather than blame. Frame challenges as learning opportunities requiring collective intelligence rather than as performance failures. Ask genuine questions to which you don't already know the answer, signaling that others' perspectives add value. Inclusive decision-making as safety mechanism. When leaders actively solicit diverse perspectives before finalizing decisions about AI implementation and genuinely incorporate frontline insights, employees experience their contributions as valued. This inclusion proves particularly powerful when leaders explain how specific employee input shaped decisions, creating visible connection between voice and outcomes, even when particular suggestions cannot be implemented. Explaining the reasoning maintains psychological safety by demonstrating that input was seriously considered rather than ignored. Celebrating learning and adaptation. Leaders who publicly recognize employees who identified system improvements, asked insightful questions, or helped colleagues navigate new tools create cultures where the learning behaviors essential for AI integration flourish, rather than only celebrating success and flawless execution. Human-centered leaders recognize the value of experimentation, questioning, and continuous improvement. This recognition signals what truly matters and encourages others to engage in similar learning behaviors. Pixar Animation Studios exemplifies psychological safety practices that enable human-technology collaboration. The company's well-documented, brain trust process brings together diverse creative teams to provide candid feedback on projects. With explicit norms that no idea is beyond questioning and that all participants, regardless of hierarchy, can voice concerns. Catmull and Wallace. 2014. Directors present work in progress to colleagues who offer honest critique. With the understanding that the director retains decision authority but benefits from collective wisdom. The psychological safety foundation that enables this candor proves particularly valuable as Pixar has integrated AI-powered animation tools. Artists honestly discuss which human capabilities the technology could not replicate and where human creativity remains irreplaceable. Leaders' consistent demonstration that candid input would be welcomed rather than punished created conditions for learning about optimal human-AI collaboration approaches. Enabling the studio to leverage technology while protecting the creative judgment that distinguishes its work. Purpose-driven work design and role clarity as AI systems assume specific tasks. Employees face fundamental questions about what their work should focus on and how their contributions create value. Human-centered leaders address this uncertainty by actively redesigning work to emphasize purpose, meaning, and uniquely human capabilities. Effective work redesign begins with helping employees understand the broader purpose their roles serve and how AI augmentation enables them to deliver that purpose more fully. For instance, rather than positioning AI as eliminating customer service tasks, leaders can frame augmentation as handling routine inquiries so human agents can focus on complex problems requiring empathy and judgment. The framing shift, from task elimination to purpose enhancement, fundamentally alters how employees experience technological change. Principles for purpose-driven redesign start with the ultimate value the work creates for customers, colleagues, or community rather than with specific tasks being automated. Identify uniquely human capabilities, complex judgment, creative problem-solving, empathetic response, contextual wisdom. That technology cannot replicate. Redesign roles to amplify these human strengths rather than having AI merely subtract tasks. Create opportunities for employees to use skills that align with why they chose their professions or joined the organization. Make visible the connection between daily activities and meaningful outcomes. Involve employees directly in redesign conversations, leveraging their expertise about what works. Providing role clarity amid change. Ambiguity about what employees should focus on post-AI implementation creates anxiety and disengagement. Leaders who work with teams to explicitly define new responsibilities, decision rights, and success metrics provide structure that enables confident contribution. Role clarity does not mean eliminating all ambiguity. Some uncertainty is inherent in transformation, but rather establishing clear enough parameters that employees understand their primary focus areas and how their success will be evaluated. Participatory redesign approaches when employees directly involved in the work help shape how AI integration will occur. Organizations generate both better designs and stronger ownership. Leaders who position workers as experts who understand contextual nuances that pure technical analysis might miss simultaneously improve implementation effectiveness and create powerful experiences of being valued. The participation communicates that employee knowledge matters and that their perspectives on maintaining work quality and meaningfulness deserve consideration. Healthcare organizations' implementation of AI-assisted diagnostic tools illustrates purpose-driven work redesign, rather than positioning the technology as replacing physician judgment. Effective leaders have framed AI as handling pattern recognition in imaging data, enabling physicians to spend more time on complex diagnostic reasoning and patient communication, activities that align with why most physicians entered medicine. At organizations like Cleveland Clinic, leaders work directly with clinical teams to redesign workflows, incorporating their insights about how AI can enhance rather than constrain their most meaningful work. Physicians help determine which decisions AI should support versus which require full human judgment. How AI recommendations should be presented, and what additional training doctors needed to interpret algorithmic output appropriately. This participatory approach generated both better outcomes and sustained professional satisfaction despite significant role changes, with physicians reporting that AI augmentation allowed them to practice medicine more in alignment with their core purpose of comprehensive patient care. Recognition and appreciation systems. Recognition systems that authentically communicate employees' value and contribution represent powerful mechanisms for human-centered leadership, particularly during periods when technological change may threaten workers' sense of being needed and valued. Effective recognition in AI-augmented contexts extends beyond traditional productivity metrics to explicitly acknowledge uniquely human contributions, creative insights, collaborative support, complex judgment, empathetic interactions, and learning behaviors. When leaders recognize these dimensions, they signal what the organization genuinely values and help employees see how their human capabilities create irreplaceable worth. Characteristics of meaningful recognition. Specificity. Generic appreciation statements generate minimal impact, while specific recognition that demonstrates leaders truly understand what the individual accomplished and why it mattered creates powerful experiences of being seen and valued. Timeliness. Recognition delivered close to the contribution proves more meaningful than delayed acknowledgement. Personalization. Recognition must reflect genuine understanding of the individual and their specific contribution. Templates and automation undermine authenticity. Public and private, both matter. Public recognition validates contributions to the broader team, while private appreciation creates intimate connection. Focus on effort and learning, recognizing not just outcomes but the effort, creativity, or learning demonstrated encourages continued growth. Behaviors. Expanding what gets recognized. Organizations implementing AI must consciously expand recognition beyond efficiency and output metrics to include helping colleagues learn new systems or processes, identifying improvements or problems with technological implementations, demonstrating empathy in complex customer or stakeholder interactions, asking insightful questions that advance collective understanding, showing courage in voicing concerns or admitting mistakes, supporting team members experiencing challenges with changes. Peer recognition systems. Platforms that enable colleagues to acknowledge each other's contributions, particularly contributions that exemplify human dimensions like supporting others, learning, or demonstrating empathy, can reinforce organization-wide commitment to human-centered values. Peer recognition proves especially powerful because it represents lateral validation rather than hierarchical judgment. When colleagues recognize each other's uniquely human contributions, they collectively reinforce what makes their work community valuable. Technology and financial services. Companies that have redesigned recognition programs to explicitly celebrate collaborative values alongside traditional performance metrics often report that employees feel appreciated for their full contributions rather than only dimensions that algorithms can measure. When recognition systems acknowledge both business results and behaviors demonstrating care for colleagues, they reinforce what truly matters in human-centered workplaces. Organizations like Salesforce have implemented recognition platforms where employees can acknowledge peers for living company values, including behaviors like mentoring others through technological transitions or demonstrating empathy in challenging customer situations, creating visible reinforcement that these human capabilities matter as much as sales metrics or technical achievements. Building long-term human-centered leadership capabilities. Developing leadership empathy and emotional intelligence. While authentic caring cannot be scripted or manufactured, organizations can systematically develop leaders' capacity for empathy and emotional intelligence, the foundational capabilities that enable genuine connection and support. Empathy development begins with creating opportunities for leaders to deeply understand employees' lived experiences during technological transformation. Structured listening programs where leaders spend dedicated time hearing employees' concerns, Aspirations and ideas without agenda provide both developmental experiences for leaders and valuable intelligence for implementation planning. When leaders genuinely engage with employee perspectives, not to defend decisions but simply to understand, they develop greater empathetic accuracy and often discover insights that improve implementation approaches. Practical empathy development approaches: structured listening sessions, regular forums where leaders listen to employees' experiences without immediately problem-solving or defending, job shadowing and immersion. Leaders spending time performing the work being transformed gain direct understanding of challenges and concerns. Anonymous feedback mechanisms. Creating safe channels for employees to share honest experiences helps leaders understand perspectives that might not surface in direct conversations. Reflection practices, journaling, coaching conversations, or peer dialogue where leaders examine their own reactions and consider employee perspectives. Scenario-based learning, working through realistic situations involving employee distress, resistance, or concerns to develop responsive strategies. Emotional intelligence for change contexts. Leaders navigating AI transformation benefit from emotional intelligence capabilities specifically tailored to organizational change contexts. Generic emotional intelligence training provides foundation, but leaders need practical strategies for recognizing and responding skillfully to the specific emotions that workplace transformation generates: anxiety about job security, frustration with imperfect systems, grief over lost aspects of previous roles, excitement about new possibilities, confusion about changing expectations. Effective development programs help leaders recognize emotional cues even when employees don't explicitly express feelings, distinguish between surface concerns and underlying fears or needs, respond with empathy while maintaining necessary forward momentum, have difficult conversations that acknowledge hard realities while conveying support, regulate their own emotions when facing employee distress or resistance. Reflective practice and peer learning. Leaders who engage in structured reflection about their caring and support behaviors, perhaps through coaching, journaling, or peer dialogue, develop greater self-awareness about when they demonstrate authentic connection versus when they default to transactional interactions. Peer learning communities where leaders share challenges and successes in supporting employees through transitions accelerate collective capability building. When leaders hear how colleagues navigated difficult situations, they expand their repertoire of responses and feel less isolated in facing common challenges. Creating accountability for human outcomes. Human-centered leadership becomes sustainable only when organizations measure and hold leaders accountable for human outcomes alongside traditional business metrics. Without explicit accountability, caring and developmental support risk becoming rhetorical commitments that yield to immediate performance pressures. Balanced assessment approaches that integrate human metrics with financial and operational indicators provide one accountability mechanism. Progressive organizations include measures such as employee engagement levels, participation rates in development programs, internal mobility success, and team-level climate assessments in leadership performance evaluations. When these human metrics carry meaningful weight alongside revenue or efficiency targets, leaders allocate attention accordingly. Meaningful human outcome metrics: employee engagement and satisfaction scores at team-level, retention rates, particularly for high performers, and specialized talent development program participation and completion, internal mobility success. How many team members successfully transition to new roles, psychological safety, climate measures, employee-reported experiences of being supported and valued, learning and experimentation behaviors, quality of developmental conversations, assessed through employee feedback, feedback mechanisms that drive improvement, organizations that share specific feedback about leaders' relational impact directly with those leaders, and expect visible response, create accountability loops that drive continuous improvement. Rather than only annual reviews, ongoing feedback mechanisms help leaders understand how employees experience their care and support, enabling real-time adjustment. Effective feedback approaches include Regular pulse surveys asking employees about specific leader behaviors, 360-degree assessments incorporating direct reports, perspectives on caring, development support, and psychological safety, creation focus groups or interviews where employees share experiences with their leaders, anonymous feedback channels where employees can raise concerns, shared results with leaders accompanied by coaching, support for improvement, succession and development, accountability. Leaders can be assessed not only on their own team's performance but on developmental outcomes. How many team members successfully transition to new roles as work evolves? How many receive promotions, whether the leader has identified and developed successes? How well prepared team members are for evolving responsibilities? These metrics capture whether leaders genuinely invest in others' growth or merely extract short-term performance. Narrative accountability. Some organizations ask leaders to regularly share specific examples of how they supported individual employees' development or helped team members navigate challenges. The narrative requirement, difficult to fabricate convincingly at scale, surfaces whether leaders truly engage in the individualized caring that human-centered leadership requires. When leaders must articulate concrete stories of developmental support, the accountability mechanism encourages actual investment in those relationships. Embedding human-centered values in organizational systems. Long-term sustainability demands embedding human-centered values not just in leadership development but in core organizational systems and processes that shape daily work experiences. Resource allocation as values signal organizations that dedicate specific resources to employee development, reskilling initiatives, and well-being support, rather than treating these as discretionary expenses, signal authentic commitment to human-centered principles. When development funding carries protected status even during cost pressures, employees and leaders understand the organization genuinely prioritizes these investments. Resource allocation speaks louder than mission statements. Employees assess organizational values based on what receives funding rather than what receives rhetoric. Technology design and procurement processes. Organizations can establish requirements that AI and automation systems must be evaluated not only for technical capability and cost but for impact on human work experience, development opportunities, and dignity. Procurement criteria might include how the technology affects employee autonomy and decision-making authority, whether implementation will create opportunities for skill development or primarily desk-skill work, how the system communicates with humans, does it explain recommendations, acknowledge uncertainty, respect human judgment, what training and support employees will need, how implementation will affect work meaningfulness and purpose, including employees in technology selection processes helps ensure human factors receive consideration before commitments are made. Performance management system redesign. Organizations are increasingly shifting from purely individual metrics toward balanced assessments that include contributions to others' success, collaborative behaviors, and demonstration of care and respect. When advancement and rewards explicitly recognize these dimensions, employees understand that being a valued community member requires more than personal achievement. Performance systems aligned with human-centered values assess individual results and business contributions, support provided to colleagues' development and success, collaborative behaviors and teamwork, living organizational values around care and respect, learning and adaptation during change, innovation and creative contributions, communication rhythms and dialogue structures. Organizations that establish regular forums where leaders and employees discuss how technological integration is affecting work experience, what support would be helpful, and how human contributions create value, sustain attention to human dimensions. The rhythms need not be elaborate. Even brief regular check-ins where leaders ask team members what support they need create cumulative experiences of being cared for. Effective communication structures include Regular town halls where leadership shares updates and answers questions, team meetings dedicated to discussing change experiences and needed support, skip-level conversations where senior leaders hear directly from frontline employees, feedback mechanisms where employees shape implementation approaches, celebration events recognizing both technological progress and human contributions. Leading organizations illustrate comprehensive operating system. Integration of human-centered values by redesigning multiple systems simultaneously. When performance management balances business results with development progress. When resource allocation ensures development funding. When technology procurement incorporates human experience factors. And when leadership development emphasizes empathy as a core competency. Caring and support become embedded in how the organization operates rather than remaining isolated initiatives. Companies like Unilever have undertaken such comprehensive redesign. Aligning talent processes, leadership expectations, technology governance, and resource allocation around principles of human dignity and development alongside business performance. Conclusion: the evidence examined throughout this article converges on a central insight. As artificial intelligence transforms workplace operations, authentically human leadership becomes simultaneously more challenging and more essential. The challenge stems from complexity. Leaders must simultaneously drive technological change, support employees through disruption, maintain performance, and genuinely care for individuals navigating uncertainty. The essential nature stems from mounting evidence that human-centered leadership significantly influences whether AI augmentation generates intended benefits or produces organizational dysfunction and human distress. Organizations and leaders willing to embrace this challenge possess clear pathways forward. Transparent, empathetic communication creates foundation for trust during transformation. Individualized development support enables employees to see technological change as opportunity rather than threat. Psychological safety unlocks the learning and innovation that human-AI collaboration requires. Edmondson. 2018. Purpose-driven work design helps employees understand how their uniquely human contributions create irreplaceable value. Recognition systems that authentically appreciate human dimensions sustain morale and engagement. These practices prove effective not because they are sophisticated management techniques but because they respond to fundamental human needs: to feel valued, to understand one's purpose, to experience growth, to be treated with dignity and respect. Leaders who authentically care about these dimensions and invest in creating daily experiences where employees feel needed and able to contribute meaningfully position their organizations for sustainable success, precisely because they honor what makes us human. The path forward requires more than intellectual assent to human-centered principles. It demands that leaders examine whether they genuinely care about their people's well-being and development, that they invest time and attention in understanding individuals' experiences and aspirations, and that they make sometimes difficult choices to prioritize human needs alongside technological and financial objectives. It requires organizations to build systems and accountability mechanisms that sustain human-centered values even when immediate pressures encourage shortcuts. The capabilities required for sustainable human-centered leadership: developing empathy and emotional intelligence, creating accountability for human outcomes, and embedding values in organizational systems, represent investments that generate returns across both human and business dimensions. Leaders who develop genuine empathetic capacity create stronger relationships that enable honest dialogue about implementation challenges. Organizations that hold leaders accountable for human outcomes alongside financial metrics sustain focus on what matters even during pressure. Systems that embed human-centered values into core processes ensure these principles survive leadership transitions and organizational changes. As we look toward workplaces where artificial intelligence plays increasingly central roles, the ultimate measure of success will not be algorithms deployed or efficiency gains achieved, but whether we create work environments where every individual genuinely feels their presence matters. Their growth receives support, and their human capabilities create value that no technology can replicate. This outcome requires leadership grounded in authentic caring, genuine empathy, and unwavering commitment to treating each person with dignity and respect, the distinctly human capacities that remain irreplaceable regardless of how sophisticated our technologies become. The transformation currently underway offers a choice point. Organizations can pursue technological efficiency while treating human dimensions as constraints to be managed. Or they can embrace human-centered leadership as the foundation that enables technology and humanity to create value neither could achieve alone. The evidence suggests the latter path generates superior outcomes for both organizational performance and human flourishing. The question is whether we possess the wisdom and courage to choose it.